Well, moving forward to our next panel discussion of the day, titled From Personalization to Hyper-Personalization, Way Forward. In this session, panelists will discuss the ways to improve the customer experience and evolve their marketing programs to be even more digital, targeted, precise, and personalized.
Straight away getting to the topic, we are now witnessing a continuous and rapid changes in customer expectations. So we have multiple different industries to represent. It's not audio. It's not audio. Is it better? Okay. So what you see as a trend in changing customer expectation in your respective industries? So let's get started with you.
Hi. So I represent the company ICICI Securities, and just to kind of give you a little more clarity on what ICICI Securities is into, we basically are a financial conglomerate which caters to all the investment and financial requirements of clients right across their investing and trading to insurance to borrowing needs. We've got various sub-segmented line of businesses. So we have the ICICI Direct platform, that's primarily our retail interface from where consumers can access almost 35 plus product categories across multiple asset classes. Then we have the private wealth that is catered through another line of business and the institutional clients. So just to give you a reference of what we've observed that, this industry has been in business for over 2 decades plus, and we were one of the initial pioneers in this category. Pre-COVID, the total number of demat accounts, which is your investment accounts, you are familiar with, say, the savings account and current account, but there is something called as an investment account called the demats. Those put together across all the organizations was a number of almost 40 million. Come COVID and post-COVID, the number today talks about 100 million. We saw a huge impetus of client inflow in terms of people adopting. Obviously, there were varied reasons. Reasons related to what happened during COVID. People got a lot more conscious about investment savings. And there was a natural affinity to take decisions around that space. The other thing that coupled this growth story was the forced digital transformation or digital adoption across the board by all the players in the category. Since our business traditionally was accessible through the branch network, through those brick and mortar structure where we would have, piles of paperwork to be signed, we were forced to take decision around adopting digital. And it wasn't about just taking any form of a digital adoption or a clear replica of our traditional format. We had to understand user journeys, evolving user interfaces across the environment that we were getting into. There were already references of seamless consumer experiences across various digital touch points in the ecosystem. Those were part of the factoring in when we evolved our digital journeys at our end. And today we are scaling up our business across the category, and we see a huge surge of what we call the digital native population. So we have a huge segment on the Gen Z that have adopted to the DMAT, which was very unlike in the past. And we see this story playing up at both India and Bharat. So right from tier 1 to 2 and 3 cities, we see a mass adoption to our category. So I see that's the changing paradigm that we've observed over the last 2.5 years as far as our category goes.
Oh, thank you. So that's India and Bharat put together. Okay. So Sapna.
Yeah, so good evening everyone. Thank you so much. Really glad to be here for this discussion. Since really it's about hyper-personalization, just an insight. I think it's been a long day for the audiences. If you've been sitting here through the day, so I guess, just an action from you, hands up if you can hear me clearly. Yeah? Okay, so that's great. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here towards the end of the day. So, I think the question really is about the changing consumer, and especially with, okay, so I represent, I'm working currently with Manipal Cigna Health Insurance. It's a health insurance organization. So, I'll be able to share insights, I think overall from an insurance perspective. And I worked earlier with education, and I worked with telecom and a lot of service sectors. So I think I have that experience. If I have to really think about this, what is really marketing about? Marketing is about doing what our audiences want. And what does the audience want these days? I mean, it's really about how to make them feel special, more, how to identify with them directly. How do you make them, how do you feel them, make sure that they're distinct, they're recognized, and that's what, this is all about. And marketing is to do a lot with insights. So, what are the insights you have on your consumer, and how do you kind of use technology, data, AI to kind of bring them forward. So these terms of personalization, hyper-personalization, which is what, our topic for the day is like. In terms of what's happening in health insurance, we'd like to kind of bucket it into 3 spaces as we move forward in this discussion. One is, what's the change currently with attitudes to health? Okay, and second one is what are the changes that we see in health insurance, and how is the consumer behavior or the method of engaging with the sector changed? So coming back to the first point on, attitude towards health. I think one key difference that we see, and I'm going to keep it sharp because I know it's end of the day, towards health, and we'll all agree, largely a lot of research would play back to us in the early days, just 2 years ago, that people felt nothing will happen to them. So there was this whole audience, whole segment of people, which felt, "Mujhe to kuch nahi hoga, everything is fine, I'll always stay healthy." I think that's completely vanished post-COVID. I think everybody feels that they might get sick. I think that's one change of consumer, behavior. The second thing, if I have to talk about how they think of health insurance, coming from the same attitude of, from health, I think everybody now feels, or at least knows, the concept of health insurance. Whereas earlier you would have to really sell the concept, and you would kind of say, "I have life, I don't need health." I think that whole prioritization has changed. And people are questioning, and I think they're also questioning how much health insurance. So instead of thinking, do I need health insurance, is really now about how much health insurance should we have. I think that's the change that's happening in the sector. And in terms of how consumers are buying, I think even, you mentioned about the whole digital adoption. I think that's become very strong. So both from a consumer, so we always had, digital touch points. But I think what's happened is both the consumer and the distributor is now very happy to engage online. So I think in terms of consumer journeys, personalization opportunities, hyper-personalization opportunities, both offline, online, that's a great advantage. Because now the consumer is not just, talking to us on, one-on-one basis. We're able to control these experiences on a digital basis. So I think that's how the sector is really evolving. So, that's the 3 insights that I'd like to kind of share on the sector for now. Thank you.
Thanks. Very interesting. So Srihari, this is more on B2B.
Thank you. Yeah, good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here. Like Sapna said, end of the day, it's hard. And we're glad, we're getting this opportunity to share thoughts over here this evening. In terms of, constitution of this panel, I'm the only one talking from a more B2B perspective, not necessarily just B2C. So beyond what was mentioned this far, a couple of things that are clearly there in front of businesses today. In fact, everybody else on the stage over here represent businesses who are reaching consumers. So, not a big fan of acronyms, but this thing, as I was just mulling over and hearing the others, VUCA, it certainly resonates today for all of us, and certainly to all the businesses that we talk to. The kind of things around volatility or uncertainty or complexity or ambiguity each of these represent is different by geos. By the way, in terms of the audiences that we speak to, and particularly the portfolio that I'm managing, is across international markets. So one thing which is very, very clear is, you're certainly not talking the same kind of problem statements across the board, right? In one place, it may be top of mind around energy, for example, for businesses. In the other place, it may be around inflation. Somewhere else, it may be around supply chain shortages. Somewhere else, it could be things, completely different around product availability or product pricing and so on and so forth, right? So, or for that matter, war impact on what's happening to those particular markets. So, it's variety. And I guess what it means for us in terms of marketing and trying to reach those audiences is how do you build that resonance given that kind of dynamism that they're all going through, right? So I'll leave it there. I know we've got plenty of conversation further on as well, but that's what I want to leave you with in terms of what's largely playing in the mind of businesses, which I think each and every one of you can hopefully resonate with right off the bat.
Thank you. Sachin, customer expectations.
What?
Customer expectations,
Yeah.
how it's changing.
Yeah, so like any other industry, it's changing in our industry as well. And I would say, it's changing so fast that today's customer delight would be tomorrow's now. Customer will keep taking you for granted, and you'll have to keep innovating just to, just to keep them with you. Second thing is I come from an industry where the rejection rate is very high. People who want to take a product from us not necessarily mean that they'll get a product from us, right? Because the rejection is higher than the conversion rates for us. And there were two problems which were very prevalent in our industry were hassles of taking a loan. Whether, it's not very far ago, people used to visit a branch before, applying for a loan. They used to go there, fill up all the forms and all, and then the decision used to happen. Second thing is, people want certainty. That if I am applying for a loan, I want to have it. Third thing is, I want to have it as soon as possible. So these are the three things, and these are the three opportunities where brands can innovate, be it a bank or fintechs, and keep and make people's life easier. So thanks to COVID, before COVID, there was an offline leg in all lending applications. People used to sign a form, physically sign, it was mandatory. So there was a delay. Usually an application took 2 to 3 days to close for a kind of a loan as personal loan. For a home loan, it might take 2, 3, 4 months, right? Now, because of different fintechs who came up in the market, taken up different processes and tried making them digital. So now the expectations have also changed. Now people want loan as soon as possible. So I have seen ads where brands are claiming that they'll give you money in 2 minutes or 5 minutes in your account, right? Completing the entire process. And it's possible, right? And thanks to RBI, because of all this CKYC, EKYC available, earlier it used to be physical copies of, your documents had to be submitted, they had to be verified, and then a loan was disbursed. Now everything can be done online. Similarly, your employment can also be verified online through different APIs. They check whether your PF was, deducted from your salary and submitted to the PF account or not. And basis that, they calculate what is the eligibility and all. So all of this thing is happening. What we are doing, the second problem, which is more prevalent, is the rejection. So just to give you a perspective, 60-65% people who apply for a loan, they get rejected because of one or another reason. And people, when they come to our platform, right, the simple process is we ask for certain details, we give them different codes, whatever codes are available for their profiles, and then they tend to select a code and then proceed. Usually what happens, people tend to select the code with the lowest interest rate, which may or may not be good for them. This is the profile. So that's what we are trying to solve, having a chances of approval model. And it's happening. It's helping us in getting higher conversion, getting the customer, customer experience better for our brand.
There is a need, and the need was served. So now the time is to serve the need the way I want. So that's where from 20, 21, 22, now it's getting into don't give me what you have, give me what I want. So we are shifting to the personalization, to hyper personalization. So why it is here and now?
Why is it?
Why hyper-personalization is now relevant and why it is here and now?
See, so earlier, especially marketeers, we used to treat people like cohorts. We used to, judge them using basic traits, be it demographics or interests and all. And we used to design products for a certain population. Now, because of the internet and the technology, things have changed. Now we can go more granular. Instead of understanding the need of a population, we can go deeper and try to understand the need of an individual, right? And because we have huge data coming in the forms of the website visits or the devices or the kind of properties these people are visiting, what kind of products they're using. We have all of this data available and it is at our disposal. We can utilize that data, go granular and design product for individuals, right? I just gave you an example of chances of approval. So by chances of approval, when people come to my site, I have their basic details, I have their credit score details because I want to know that so that I can serve them better with a better product. Now I can pick a product which is useful for that particular individual rather than having a product for the entire population, right? So that's why personalization is becoming more and more important. Both from the customer's point of view, it will give them better experience. From the brand's point of view, because it'll minimize the cost of servicing that customer. Obviously, there'll be an one-time cost of getting the infrastructure at place, but your conversions will be higher, and the effective cost of acquisition and servicing would be much lower.
That's a great point. Effective cost of servicing the customer comes down when you give the
because
product.
People will come back. If you give them good service, they'll come back.
So I'll take this question in a little different way, and I'll kind of try to de-jargonize the whole personalization to hyper-personalization experience. So the anecdote, the way it goes is that, assuming there are two friends who catch up after a very long time or meet incidentally in this very conference, and there's an exchange of message that's happening while I'm speaking, of catching up for a drink at the bar at the Lalit post the conference, right? One of them suggests, let's catch up since it's been long, and they walk into the bar, and they approach the bartender, and he greets the two customers. The one who suggested happens to get a call and he walks out, and the second one promptly orders his drink, and he orders a gin tonic, okay? And the first friend who walks in post his call takes his seat, and the bartender returns with a glass of gin tonic and a scotch on the rocks. What do you think really happened here? So the friend who ordered the drink was someone that the bartender got to meet for the first time and understood that data point. The friend who got the scotch was hyper-personalized because he had in his mental note the data point of his usual choice, and he knew his customer well enough to serve him what he needs when he walks into the bar, right? Now this referencing of personalization and hyper-personalization is at an n is equal to 1, is at scaled up because of what technology offers to us today. In the past, we had a lot of silos created on data, which is also in certain cases in some of the industries still a major problem. But today you have data integration, you have data lake bringing in various inputs on various data source points. You have companies investing into advanced artificial intelligence to create predictive analytics to identify this n is equal to 1 cohort and serve the customer. In our own case, when we look at it in our segment, when the user comes to our site, we are able to identify him because we've tagged him based on him being either a customer or a non-customer. Once we know he's a customer, his digital footprint is tagged to an ID that allows us to track his entire behavior on the website. Right from the touch point he engages with, the communication he engages with, the product pages or the sections that he's engaged with, including the events that are being tracked. This rich insight then helps us to, through the analytics model, arrive at what kind of potential communication or offering can be served to him to reduce the mass bombarding or one size fits all approach to being an n is equal to 1, right from understanding his risk averseness, his past data on transaction. All of these insights help us to hyper personalize the communication, which in turn enables reduction on wastage, which enables a higher offtake and an impact on the revenue for us. And taking this forward, we all experience this, whether it's a OTT platform that we are served with like a Netflix or a Spotify or a Swiggy. If we are used to ordering a certain set of food on a particular point in time, you would find that on the top order referencing as a nudge, right? Or if it's the OTT, you're consuming a certain content, you will always find that being on the top order as part of the hyper personalized that the platform does. So these are living examples that we all are going through. And today, all of this is possible because of the ecosystem that's in existence in the digital world. Thank you.
Thank you. So Sapna, while we hear a lot of why it is here and now, there is a journey aspect to it, which is key in terms of making the hyper-personalization. If we take your industry, it was predominantly distributor-led, which now has got multiple touch points. So how do you make sense when it comes to journeys as playing a pivotal role in hyper-personalization?
Sure, interesting question and interesting discussion earlier on also. So I just want to take it on from there, what we were saying. So just taking you back to this era, like in terms of the ecosystem. So even journeys are kind of dependent on the ecosystems that are now available to us. Okay, so earlier if you go to the era of say television, okay, being the main medium, and you had this audience that started your journey with seeing a 9 o'clock prime time ad of an organization. So at that stage, you couldn't really do anything, right? It was mass advertising. So you were kind of marketing, or the journey was starting to everybody at the same time, and you really didn't know anything more. कि हमने इतने spots चलाए हैं, इतना reach है, इतना frequency है. That's the kind of information you would start because the ecosystem gave you that. That's what TV advertising that we all grew up with. Now with digital and the number of data signals that you are getting, and how you're tracking, as Deepak also mentioned on the website, the journey can get sharper and sharper and sharper. I mean, really, the way we use a journey, there is no limit to it. It's all about catching those, so personalization, hyper-personalization. Let me just take 2 minutes to just share what I think about that. When we say, okay, so the era of television done, we move to digital. Now digital, how did marketing in the last few years, how has it been? We've been kind of looking at personas. So you have this persona, I'm looking at avid investors, I'm getting those kind of signals. I'm looking at people who are engaging and buying online, and I can create communication to this cohort of consumers. I start my journey from there. That's great, because I was earlier starting a journey with anybody. It could be a student, a housewife. Now I'm going and saying, okay, my TG is this, and I'm going to start my journey from this stage, and I'm able to do so much more. My ROI and measurement is getting sharper. So that was the whole era of personalization. All of us felt very excited then when we got, dear Sapna, and you got personalization meant your name was there. Now that's become hygiene, like, geography, email. There was various parameters and signals we started capturing and started making communication or starting our journey with that. So that's, I think, a lot to do with personalization. Still that happens. So which is like basic technologies allowing you to personalize that experience and, really follow your journey. It's all about the ecosystem and the data available to the marketer and the business to kind of share that back. But also, it's not only about, it's also about creating a product. And I'll park that thought, but I will come back to that again. So we had that step. Now I think the opportunity, and why you're talking about customer journey here and now, is really about using data in real time and that action also in real time. Now that is really hyper-personalization. So just, so personalization, the way I see it is I have data, I make a cohort, there is a persona, and I do a journey for that persona. When I'm talking hyper-personalization, I am actually targeting this segment of one. I know this is, actually I'm not targeting a persona anymore, I'm targeting a person. And in real time. So I'm catching that data signal in real time and I'm reacting and acting in real time. And that also at scale. So I think that's really the opportunity and available to marketers to explore, and I think it's limitless. And how do we actually take that journey at every step of the funnel? Right from awareness to where did the person drop off, what kind of a product the person was searching for. The next time, where can I kind of see the person and put that, product back? We're seeing it all across us, right? You go to any site, you go to Myntra, you see a something that you want to buy, then it follows you around till you say, okay, I don't want to see it anymore. Stop showing me that journey. Or if you go back to the site, they will start back from where you dropped off. So it's, it's at every stage of the journey. In terms of health insurance, because, I want to share one very interesting example, which Cigna in I think in one of the Asian markets is doing. And it's not really about, digital only. So this example is really about at the call center, taking data signals when the call is coming about the person at the other end, what's the emotional state of the person. The caller gets assigned to that, person. Really, I thought that was brilliant.
Fantastic.
In real time, I know how the mood is. I'm getting a couple of signals to determine the mood of the customer. Is he an irate customer? Is he a happy customer? So, I have more senior colleagues getting assigned to a person who's going to be more troublesome, so to say. But so that's really a great example I thought that I could share about the customer journey.
Great insights on journeys. So I'm just checking the time. With journeys now, I will just open this question. First I'll start with you, Srihari, and then we have discussed a lot about data, AI. We have touched in almost all the responses. While we know data, AI and automation are the three key pillars to do hyper-personalization, what should be the brand or an organization's roadmap in terms of building these three to accomplish hyper or near to hyper-personalization? Because that roadmap is very key.
Yeah, no, that's important. And I loved Sapna's example. Just taking a step back, right, in terms of personalization, even in the B2B environment as an example, clearly, cutting through the noise that any customer is hearing, right? It could be even in the B2C environment, B2B environment. There's a lot of noise out there. I mean, even in this room today, you can count the number of times people pick up the phone, check something because you're getting bombarded with some sort of a message, and they believe you should be doing something at this point in time. So, in that environment, as marketers, if you can do a reasonable job of cutting through that noise and making your message stand out, whether this is the best time to go have that samosa or the best time to go have an investment in certain technology is really, really paramount. And the way you can probably do that is through making sure your message resonates. And all of our efforts, everybody in this room, your effort is to make sure you put the best message at the best time and so on and so forth, right? So that's definitely a given. And to your point, data is powering a lot of that, right? Everybody is super excited about the Kool-Aid data can provide, oh my God, we can do all of these things, etc. My sense is this is fantastic, this is really, really good. And certainly, if you can decipher from data to knowledge, intelligence, and then making those calls of what needs to be positioned, then you've covered a lot of ground and certainly improved on conversions and less rejections, etc. I believe in this scenario and in the situation that we're operating in, data becomes the common ground for multiple functions to have a conversation with the customer on, right? So there is no more ambiguity about, hey, I believe we should be positioning this versus that, right? Data becomes very, very clear. As an example, data can tell you with all of the myriad signals out there, who is in market for a solution, okay? And if they are in market for a solution and actively researching or buying, whether it is a consumer product or if it is a B2B product, data will tell you that. And therefore, data's first role at a very, very simple level becomes, can I connect the dots between the different functions who are going to be reaching out to that customer? So marketing puts a message, sales follows up with whatever message, and hopefully they are positioning the same thing that marketing is recommending to them. Okay, so that's the data lens of it. That's the connectivity between silos. I think that's a huge lever for businesses. That is a very huge lever, right? I mean, if you look at, and I saw this actually earlier today, this morning, around growth opportunities for businesses, right? You know, you can have like 1 million cuts out there, but finding those levers which can actually move the rock, you know, data plays that big role, and everybody sort of rallies around it is an important point. Around automation, I think it is, again, very, very interesting because you have a common ground and you can take actions basis that, right? And we will all agree that, listen, automation is great, but if you've got it to be able to, the point where it works for you and just doesn't go off all over the place and annoy somebody, then you've got it generally working for you, right? And you can do that in a lot of cases around things like productivity, for instance, right? What you don't want to do mundane things, and that's why automation plays a critical role, and marketing is got plenty of spaces for automation around any of these pieces once you agree on which parts of data and what it's telling you. Now, finally, around AI, the way I've seen examples of this being actively used is, can you predict, basis all the signals out there, who is in market for a solution? And we're talking about significant investments that businesses are going to make. Then you have solved a very big problem of whom you want to get in front of. You know, and then with that resonance, what do you pitch to them? I guess the most important question is, why should they be looking at this point now? So if you crack that, then, you know, you've got a little bit of, you know, ground you've covered on the journey. So certainly use data as the common layer for everybody to speak the same language, is what I'd say.
Yes. Anyone want to add anything on top of the best practices on these 3 pillars which you have done in your organization? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, I would just take a step back and refer to one of the incidents that I witnessed, and it partly covers the earlier reference of the journey and how data and automation all comes together. So I was scheduled to travel to Delhi for an event similar to this nature, where I was going and addressing the audience, and my tickets were booked through one of the travel portal, right? And one evening before, I was trying to struggle to find out, once I land into that destination, which was Delhi, how do I plan my onward journey to the hotel that I had to go and attend the event. I was told by the organizers that the hotel would push across to you the details of the driver and you'll be taken care of in terms of you don't need to worry, everything will come to you on time. When I landed in Delhi, and just when the flight, the tires touched the tarmac, and I switched on my mobile, I got a push notification, courtesy the same travel portal, stating, first of all, addressing me by my name and mentioning that I have a cab service available from so-and-so parking lot, and here is a promotional code, and I can pay the driver on arrival, or on reaching the destination. So I was sorted, I walked across, got into the cab, headed towards the hotel, and 10 minutes before I reached the hotel, I get a frantic call from the hotel staff saying, "Sir, where are you?" And I said, "I'm just reaching the hotel, I'll be probably there in the next 10 minutes. He said, "No, but there is a driver and a cab waiting for you at the airport." And then I get a call from the driver frantically trying to figure out where am I. And what I realized at that moment was the power of data, consumer, moment of truth, insight, and the automation all coming together to push something which is extremely contextual and relevant to me as a need of the hour at a point in time when I just landed, right? And this is a classic example of what I see when you bring in the data, the AI, as well as the automation, right? So this is the play up that you can achieve if you've got your data not acting in silos, you've integrated the data, you have an AI engine to ensure that you identify the right n is equal to 1 cohorts, and you contextualize your message using real-time push through a relevant channel. They could have emailed me, but they chose to do a notification because they realized that a customer at that point in time is going to first react to a mobile handset-led messaging, and they did not even do an SMS. They did a notification through a WhatsApp push. So I think that's a beautiful case which I can relate and call out that I have witnessed when it comes to journey and bringing it all together.
Thank you. But that gives rise to a very important point when it comes to hyper-personalization. Customers give as much data as possible. Brands consume as much they want. There is an element of trust. Where is the line? Okay. There is a difference between personalization, creepiness. Okay. How much is too much? And is that level of personalization everyone is looking for? They are looking for, but before a brand even gets in there, it's very important to build that element of trust. I would like to hear from each one of you your viewpoint on that trust before we personalize. Yeah, go ahead, Sachin.
I just continue the same example which is mentioned just now. Guess instead of getting a push notification from the same organization, as soon as you landed, you got an advertisement from the competitor. How would you feel? How do they know that I landed in Delhi? How do they know that I need a car right now? I'm getting out of the airport. How would you feel? So this is the line between personalization and spookiness. And it happens with all of us, right? We are talking about something. Suddenly we see a Google ad about the very same thing. Because it's the truth. Our device, Google, Alexa, all of these big organizations, they're capturing everything. Right now, when I am giving my data to the brand, I know and I should know how that data will be used to make my life better. Right? When he gave the data to the booking organization, he knew that this data will be used to make my journey better. My journey more comfortable. But if the same data is used for something else, right, which is not relevant to me, then it's a problem.
So use it in the context for the person. Yeah. Hari.
You want to add something? No, I think it's to the point where you don't get it wrong. Okay, it's very simple, right? If you, obviously there are regulation and rules of how you collect data and are meant to utilize the data, right? And pretty much all the firms are definitely intending to use it within those boundaries, right? So I think that's absolute hygiene, it's basic. But once you start utilizing it and you believe you're going to give something of value to the customer, I think that's where the line starts. You have to figure out where that line is and what's the shape of the line. Are you interpreting those signals correctly? And are you crossing the threshold of becoming annoying? Right? And there will be complaints, no doubt. There may be repercussions, no doubt. So I think it's a call you need to make in the context of how you're drawing the line with that factor in mind, given the fact that you are definitely keeping the regulation pieces all checked off, right? That's a non-negotiable. But beyond that, that's the call you need to make. Okay. And again, beyond, one more point above that is the number of times you can touch the customer is also determined, right? So, and it depends on which market. Some markets are more stringent, like Australia has extreme sort of strong rules around it, and you cannot deviate from that. Some other places probably have a different threshold. So all of that falls within this, but once you've crossed that, it's a call you need to make as a marketer around, are you annoying the customer or you're not, right? And is it going to backfire on you?
Okay.
Just want to add one more line. See, when we capture consumer data, there are two type of data we capture. One, which is consciously given by the consumer to us. Second, which we capture through various cookies, which even the consumer does not know. What sort of data are we capturing and how we'll utilize that data. If we tell our consumer upfront that this is what we are capturing and this is why we are capturing it, why this data is relevant for us, relevant for our relationship, and how we are going to use this data to make your life easier as long as we are doing it. And the consumer knows that, okay, they have this data, it's secure, it's safe with them, they're not going to misuse it, it's fine. If we use that data, the data which consumer has not given us consciously, without telling him, and if we start using that data to personalize, it's gonna, basically annoy the consumer. How do they know? So first we need to tell them how do we know, and then start using it.
Brilliant. So disclose first.
Yeah, so I'm just going to just sum this up a bit since you've all spoken. I think the key word here is really about consent. Consent, and then coming forward how that builds trust. So if I have to kind of, build that line between consent and trust. So there's a research, Forrester, I think research, which kind of said that 20% or 22% of consumers, and especially in health, are willing to share their data with you if the results are beneficial to them. So if we design a product or an engagement, they are very happy to share that data. So there is consent and then there is value, and we are all in a great space. So consent, value, trust, and that's great. The moment we cross that line into like the third party, data, using data in a way that is, really unsolicited, like a marketer wouldn't feel happy if it was done for me. So if my ethics, as a marketer and an individual, the moment you start questioning that, is this something that if it happened to me, I would be okay with? I think that's the question we need to really ask. And if the answer to that is yes, am I okay with this information? I really didn't share it. I didn't give consent for it to be used, but it's being kind of, used, and am I comfortable with it? I think then that's when you should start really questioning your journey, your strategy, because that's not going to be a long-term approach, because then you will lose the loyalty, whatever gains that you did, and you start crossing that line, there's bound to be backlash and, loss of reputation and loyalty once you start crossing that line.
Well said. Thank you.
So, I kind of resonate with what my fellow panelists have mentioned, and I think consent and trust is core to, if I refer to the financial category, I think we are, the bedrock of our business is around the trust factor, right? And besides the fact that we are extremely, or we are highly regulated, right? So we have to be in the realms of whatever the regulation permits or does not allow us, and we have to ensure that we abide by those rules. But in my personal opinion, I think this is still a very evolutionary journey that we've all carved out as marketeers when it comes to building this whole ecosystem of data-led insights, and building in real time, targeting to customers. So I think there will be ups and downs in the journey. But I think what's important as a marketer or as an organization is that you're sensitive to the consumer feedback. So you need to have the right point of signals coming to you and how you assimilate and just double click those signals to identify your consumer reaction so as to improvise or enhance your data-led decisioning, right? Because at the end of the day, we are also as marketers conscious that we're going to get into the cookieless world. So we have to get to a stage where we understand the first party data, we understand beyond the dynamics of demographic or what he puts across to us at the time of entry. And that's only going to come in when we are able to understand his behavior across our digital ecosystem, right from his consumption patterns to his behavior on the usage of our products. And some of this also helps the consumer because sometimes subconsciously he may not realize it. For example, if a customer has invested into a particular stock and he's taking a decision around, probably letting go of it, my ability to proactively guide him and say that, hold on buddy, there is an opportunity for you to gain because there is an upcoming dividend that can help you to multiply, is something in his benefit. So as long as I'm conscious about what I'm using it and how am I using it, and if it's at the core heart of customer centricity and customer benefit, I think to an extent that leeway needs to be taken. But like I said, one needs to have the consent, the trust needs to be at the core, and you need to be very conscious and avoid being extremely intrusive, which was cited in some of the references that were made earlier. That's something we need to probably keep a distance from.
Thank you. So we are on top of the hour, but I have one very important question. So all of us are now attempting to do hyper-personalization. We are personalized based on the granular level data that we get from digital journeys, while we are trying to make sense of the entire journey, because for any product, for a customer to acquire, today there are at least 3 touch points. If it is a financial product, it is branch, distributor and online. And the product discovery starts online and sometimes it ends offline. So we are trying to make sense out of journeys and measuring journey on where it is failing and trying to learn, even trying to create new products or offerings, pricing models based on how customers are consuming the journeys. Now at this stage, is there any measurements like a ROI is a well used term, I'm not going to use it. So how do you see at this stage the personalization can be called as reasonably successful, or the brands have achieved it or on road to achieve it? What are the benchmarks or a baseline at this point in time? Anyone?
I can start. So very interesting question. ROI has to come in everything that we do. Couldn't end this discussion without ROI. Yeah, but see, I think there are measurements, and I think the easiest one here is especially at the acquisition stage. So what is the cost of acquisition? With personalization, hyper-personalization, what's your cost of acquiring that customer at different touch points? And I think that's maybe a start measurement that companies could look at. And going down the journey, I think it's all about experiences. So how does hyper-personalization and personalization create those experiences? So more about the customer life cycle. So the customer's gotten and in the life cycle, what's the kind of experience you create? I think those are maybe not measurable immediately, but more a long-term measurement. So, would really encourage for us to really try these technologies. I think there has to be a long-term view, on the brand and the business. So how do you kind of create that brand value? What is the NPS? What's the retention rates? These become valuable measures instead of just the, the cost of acquisition too. So I think we got to look at it both, short term and a little longer view on these technologies and pilots.
Okay. Srihari, you have a point?
Yeah, I think concur with what was mentioned. A couple of things that I would add may not be necessarily in the way we've always looked at ROI with dollar returns on outcomes or investments. But I'd add 2 things as marketers which I think we should just keep an eye on, and maybe for the business overall. One is agility, right? So Are we far more agile today because of these opportunities and the signals and customer journeys, all of this that is telling us? So agility is one way I would look for as success, not just within marketing, but across the business. So that's one. The other thing that I would look for is our ability to be better pattern matchers, right? Which is, hey, this pattern seems to be working. Can I replicate this pattern somewhere else, right? And you could call it n is equal to 1, you could call it n is equal to 10, 100, whatever, but you are segmenting further down, down, and down, right? I don't think we're necessarily there as n is equal to 1, but if you're able to move that segment further down, and whether you call it sub-segmentation or whatever, then I would say I think that's another great signal that your personalization or hyper-personalization efforts are on the right trajectory. May not be ROI, but right trajectory. So look for agility, look for better pattern matching is what I'd say.
So if I refer back to our own industry, we kind of review it across the three clear stages. One is obviously the acquisition stage, the activation, and the retention. Now when it comes to the acquisition, we kind of review it in the context of, so like I touched at the very start about the growth story that played up for us on the category. And the journeys that we carved out are at a constant evolutionary cycle because we are reviewing it on a regular basis, year on year, or at a regular frequency to ensure that the customer friction points are eliminated. So where in our category opening a demat account used to be a context of couple of weeks or days or weeks is today talking about less than couple of minutes. Now that's the efficiency at which we try to measure how this entire journey path is carved out, and are we making it frictionless? If he's dropping off, does he get in and gets a starting point from very last left? So these are elements that aid in making sure that the time taken to acquire a customer is also then aiding in our cost of acquisition reduction. That's how we correlate it. When it comes to obviously activation, and Sri mentioned about agility. So we do run a lot of agile squads around potential predictive analytical cohorts, which are segmented based on past data and even newly acquired customers, where insights are developed on targeting these segments with the right choice of products, and those then aid into driving the activation rate. And we see the progression of increase on activation because that then supports our acquisition cost. And when it comes to retention, since we offer a wide array of products, we have multiple data signals. Obviously, the demographic data is like the usual, easy to refer to. But with the transactional data, with the external score, like the CIBIL scores or other data points, we are able to create sharper insights into the consumer and leverage that to identify the relevant asset classes that he would react to. So for someone who's most conducive to take a high-risk solutioning, we would look at those product cohorts and offer it. Again, those streams at our end tend to work in two different tracks. One is an experimental track, which is where the agile squad comes into play. And based on that agile squad, we keep reviewing the efficiency on the adoption or the conversion metrics. That then aids in building a scenario on the sub-segmented cohort to look at a scale-up business as usual modeling. So that's how we play it up across the three vertical tracks at our end when we look at various categories of asset classes, products, and consumer segments.
Thank you. While we are on top of the hour, I can open up for one question from audience.
See, there are credit rating companies who give the less credit to the persons who own the red colored cars. Maybe personality or the lifestyle of that person. So when you do the hyper personalization, do you count this lifestyle data or the lifestyle count in the person's personality and then give the other predictions or the whatever you wanted to do with that person?
So the question is, when the hyper personalization happens, the data with respect to lifestyle, those credit rating, all those data, will all this be combined to create that hyper personalization? So, Sachin, So, right?
Yeah. So see, for personalization, whatever data is available, that data is used, right? Up to what extent, that depends on the reason, where we are doing, not the reason, but the place where we're doing the personalization, right? Like my fellow panelists rightly mentioned that there are three ways. Acquisition is one where we try personalization to reduce the cost of acquisition. There is servicing, there is engagement, and then obviously there is retention, right? So the data which you mentioned, lifestyle data, I'll give you an example. There was a health insurance company which gave discount to people who walk more. So what they were doing, they were capturing the steps of the people when they were acquiring these customers, and when the renewal came, they gave a discount to these people who walked more. People who did not walk, they gave a, they charge a higher premium for them. So whatever data is available and whatever data is useful for the brand, useful for the company, they would use that data to serve you.
And the underlying point here is consent. Because they gave a consent to use the lifestyle data, so they got rewarded.
So in fact, we do the same thing. So, exact example, we call them healthy reward points. So in the beginning itself, the consumer gives consent. We have the app, we track it, and you get a discount on your renewal premium if you have covered, the steps that is mentioned, and you've done those activities, you've done the, you've kept yourself healthy. So that consent has been given, data has been measured, and the value has been given back to the consumer. So we are all in the right domain of using it. So as long as we use the data with consent and create value back that we give back to the consumer, it's absolutely a plus.
All right then. Thank you. And we're on top of the hour. It's blinking now. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for being a patient audience. Thank you.